Well, hello and welcome back to another edition of Sports and Spiritual Things. I'm your sports pastor. I'm Dr. Andrew Patton. You like sports pastor. I've never had a sports pastor. Well, you got one now. Glad to see you. Glad to see you. We've been off for a few weeks, and I tell you, the spring allergies and those kind of things, they are no joke. But I tell you, NFL free agency is in full bloom. And I tell you, there are a lot of guys that are getting paid. So tonight's episode is called Can I Get Paid? I mean, there's a rap song. I can't remember 80s who sings it, but it says, Get paid, young brother, get paid. You don't say that part, but that's the clean version here because I am your sports pastor, right? I have to be a great example, not to say those type of unsavory words and those things that does not make me look as saved and sanctified and filled with the Holy Spirit. Now, if you grew up the way I grew up, you know exactly what I just said. Some of y'all probably like, what does that mean? But I'm glad that you're here. But I'm glad that many free agents out there are getting their just due. Did you know that the NFL free agency period is only 30 years old, 31 years to be exact? The very first big name free agent was the late Minister of Defense, a fellow yokeman in the gospel as well, Reggie White, back in 1993. He signed for a whopping $17 million. That was a lot of money back then. And he was considered the missing piece to what was considered a championship caliber team with Brett Favre emerging as the starter and literally taking the league by storm after the 92 season or 93 season. And then Reggie White, the offseason signing in the spring of 93, going into the fall of 93, 94, 95, and 96, where the Packers was really a top tier NFL franchise. And in that 4 or 5 year window, at Reggie's really most dominant time of his career, they got one Super Bowl. They nearly they went to two straight. Of course, Denver ends up edging them for their first Super Bowl championship, and they do exactly what they thought that they would. The Packers thought what they were going to do. The Broncos went back to back, and the Packers did not. So a little bit of NFL history and free agency, and I think that free agency in the NFL probably now has overtaken NBA free agency. It used to be years ago covering sports. I remember how the NBA free agency in the summer was always the cat's meow, and thankfully for the NBA, they don't have to compete with NFL free agency because of the way the seasons end. If NBA free agency and NFL free agency was at the same time, boy, man, that would be really tough for the NBA. And NBA free agency is NBA free agency, but the NFL free agent period really is one of those things that I still think is really a hoax because it seems like to me a lot of teams don't really get the bang for the buck. Now the players get what they want because their prior teams, didn't want to pay. So the free agent market allows them to ask this question that we're asking tonight: Can I get paid? Right? When you look at the list of free agents out there, from Russell Wilson, from Austin Eckler to whom else out there? Saquon Barkley. You name those names, and they're big names. They're great names, and many of them had great seasons and had great runs. Calvin Ridley signing with the local team that I don't root for, but we have a team here called the Tennessee Titans, and it's so funny how free agency is so fickle because they had one AJ Brown a few years back who basically was in his prime, began to set the league on fire, made Ryan Tannehill the Pro Bowler that he was, helped the Titans get to a couple AFC Championship games, along with the great and powerful Derrick Henry, and only to let this guy walk over $2 or $3 million. Then he goes in his first year with the Eagles and pushes them over the hump, and that GM that was previously to the one that's there now, Rand Cathon, if I think his name is. Uh, he gets a new job because the previous ownership, at least the previous management GM regime, had no sense, no clue where AJ Brown wanted to be here. That is the dark side of NFL free agency because a lot of guys want to stay. A lot of guys like where they are, but certain GMs can nickel and dime. The draft is considered really a more, I guess, viable and I guess more financially, fiscally responsible way to build a franchise. That's the nice way of saying a lot of teams want to be as cheap as they can, and you can't blame them. You have the salary cap. You have players on the flip side of that before free agency starts. They get cut. That guaranteed money's run out. Sometimes guaranteed money is still on the table. Ask Russell Wilson. He could tell you that part. Where a team wants you gone so bad that they're willing to be 84 million in the salary cap jail for the least foreseeable future. Now, that means they really want you gone, right? So when you understand it from that perspective, free agency is not created equal. And I think that there are a lot of times there are players that really get paid. Ask Daniel Jones. Last year's free agency, this guy only threw for 15 touchdowns. Let me say that again. 15 touchdown passes in an NFL season. Now he rushed for another 7 or 8 or 9 or whatever. Maybe you can count that 22 total touchdowns. But let's be honest. With certain guys in this NFL game that we like to cover, how many rushing touchdowns they don't have is not what we really are concerned about. The eye-popping thing that says, can he play from the pocket? Can he bring us back with his arm more so than his legs? Is the question. And Daniel Jones hadn't really been asked that question. Not necessarily. And I think that Saquon Barkley, the one thing you got to ask yourself if you're him, and if you're a Giants fan in particular, and that fan base, trust me, you guys have my deepest sympathy. You probably have the dumbest ownership group. And I know that's harsh from the sports pastor. I know that sounds really harsh to say, but that is about as nice as I can put it without saying any other profanities or other vulgarities to really try to explain how stupid the management and the ownership of the New York Giants is. How in the Hades can you sign Daniel Jones to that kind of money? That's as close as I get without cussing. How in the world do you sign Daniel Jones to that kind of money, but franchise Saquon Barkley? Saquon Barkley is the only reason why you're that close to even be thought of winning. In fact, Saquon Barkley played his heart out the year before. That's why you got to the playoffs. That's why you won a playoff game. But yet, Daniel Jones gets a contract and Saquon gets franchised. Ultimately, he has to sign with your division rival. Hear that again. Sign with your division rival and get paid the money he deserves because the franchise that drafted him, #2 overall, decided that he wasn't worth it. But a quarterback who doesn't read defenses well, who even with the coach that's supposed to be a quarterback whisperer in Brian Daboll, looked like it was working, right? There's a lot of things that they hitch their wagon to. The coach, Saquon, and, well, he'll play good enough. And the truth of the matter is, the guy that they brought in, I think this guy is was a late round pick in the draft. The backup played much better than Daniel Jones. Played more games during the season, right? So that's the negative side of free agency, right? We like to see Saquon get his money. We like to see Calvin really get paid. We like some guys that we see that deserve to really earn and cash in because they've been productive players their entire careers. We like to see Derrick Henry get his money like he did with the Titans, the second contract after the first 4 years of rushing for over 5,000 yards and up team million zillion touchdowns. only to not be brought back after this contract because he's 30. And then you allow him to go sign with a contender that has a quarterback like Lamar Jackson who can keep defenses off balance. And all you got to do is give the rock to Derrick Henry at least 15, 25 times. And guess what he's going to do? He's going to punish you even more. And you're going to look up. He's probably going to have about 12 or 1,300 yards, about 9, 10 touchdowns. Lamar's going to throw for his user 35 to 4,000 yards. He'll probably tick up to about 29, 30 passing touchdowns, rush for another 10. That defense will be good. That offense will be good. And they'll be at the top of the AFC yet again. And the team that Derek left, they're probably going to be at the bottom of the division. And I know that they feel good about signing Tony Pollard, which makes no sense. A guy, even though he's from the area, he's not an every down back. He's not even close to Derrick Henry. Yeah, he may be younger, but for the money and the time that you signed Tony Pollard, you could have gave Derrick Henry that money and allowed him to become the all-time leading rusher in Titans history, surpassing Eddie George and surpassing Earl Campbell and those names that is in Titans Oilers folklore. You could have done that. Oh, but no. That was too much like right. You will go and bring a shiny new toy like Pollard, who hadn't played a full season where he has toted the rock as many times as Derrick Henry. Because you'd rather have the other young running back you got in Tajay Spears, I think is his name, and Tony Pollard, and them split carries. Tajay is still on a rookie deal, so you ain't really spending that much money, at least in your head. But then you sign Calvin Ridley, right? And all this looks like it's going to look good. But it might not. Because here's the question mark. You still got to figure out whether or not Will Levis can play. Did he show some bright spots? Absolutely. But he has a quarterback in the same division that was the rookie of the year who played much better. Absolutely. There's a reason why Will Levis dropped to the second round. Yes. Yes, yes, yes. Does he have talent? Absolutely. I'm not taking anything away from him. But here's the glaring elephant that's the truth in the room. Come closer, listen to your sports pastor, let's pray. And particularly if you're a Titans fan, right? I'm praying for you, but just get prepared to probably finish third or fourth in the division. Why? Because Houston is probably going to win this division. I believe that Jacksonville will turn it around just a tad. They may be able to replace Ridley in the draft. That's probably why they let him walk, right? They believe in what I like to call him Sunshine. I can't always remember his name. You know, Sunshine from Remember of the Titans. Trevor Lawrence, yeah, him, that guy with the golden locks, right? Didn't have such a great season. They're probably not sure if he's their franchise. He's probably playing for a contract this year as well. He's got to put up or shut up this year. He's got the coach in Doug Peterson. Poor guy had the unfortunate, situation to be coached for a year by Urban Meyer, a guy that had no business coming into the NFL, trying to bring college principles and leadership styles into the NFL. It didn't work. He didn't even last the whole season. They got him out of there quick. So, with that being said, free agency looks really murky for some. Like, look at the Steelers, right? They are the big winners, if you ask me, because they were able to claim Russell Wilson off the scrap heap for nothing, right? All they got to pay him is $1.2 million. Then they basically, in the middle of the night, for some Skittles and an envelope, they got Justin Fields from the Chicago Bears, who's doing everything that they can to shore up their reputation. Because when you go back and you look at their draft picks for quarterbacks or free agent signs for quarterbacks, it is atrocious. It is atrocious. Outside of Jim McMahon and maybe the Jay Cutler era was all right. They had some flashes in the pan with certain guys. They got to the Super Bowl with Rex Grossman. Wasn't because of him. He just so happened to be the starting quarterback, right? So with that being said, the genius, the defensive genius, I might add, of Lovie Smith is how they got there, and they got rid of him. So they've struggled since then. They're probably on their third or fourth coach since they fired him, and they passed on Patrick Mahomes. They passed on what's his face? I can see his face. Deshaun Watson. they passed on a lot of great quarterbacks, and they thought that they was doing a good job because when they took Justin Fields number 11, it kind of stopped the boo birds. It kind of stopped some of the criticism just a tad bit. But of course, Justin Fields didn't look like they thought he would look, and it wasn't all Justin Fields. They just did not put the team around him because that's another franchise that has an inept front office, and they're never really active that much sometimes in free agency. And when they are, they're trying to do it on the cheap. They're never trying to really invest a lot of money. And it's one thing to say, look, and I don't blame them, honestly, because the free agency perp walk doesn't always work out. It just doesn't, because certain guys just don't pan out. So the draft, you'd rather kind of be in the draft from a space of saying at least that rookie contract is a lot better than all that guaranteed money for a guy that didn't bust a grape that we signed in free agency. But with that being said, when you look around the league and you look at what in last year what Derek Carr signed for with the Saints, how'd that work out? That ain't looking good. How did it work out with getting trading for, and this wasn't a free agency move, but it was still a trade, trading for Aaron Rodgers. All that money he's due and he's owed. And he didn't even play a full game, didn't even play a full series at 38, 39 years old, and he's hurt. And they're expecting, because they're adding some pieces in free agency there, that just with the folklore and the legend of what Aaron Rodgers has been, note that what he has been versus what he is now, I feel sorry for that coach. I really feel sorry for Robert Saleh, because you got to hitch your wagon to a 40-year-old guy who probably won't be ready to play, who's probably going to get hurt yet again, because that offensive line is not very good. And what's going to happen is, as soon as the young wolves of the defensive lines of the AFC and NFC top of the food chain get a hold of him, look, he's probably going to miss more than half of the season. And all of the free agent acquisitions are not going to feel good. All the draft picks are not going to feel well. This is a team that took a guy number 2 overall, 3-4 years ago, and they found out he couldn't play, and they're holding on to him. Nobody wants to trade for him. So it's kind of one of those things when you look at it. It is NFL free agency, A to Z sports. It is a crapshoot, and it is so unfair for franchises and fan bases. But at the same time, there is something to be said. I'm not mad at players that deserve to get paid. You know, when Von Miller had that great season after helping the Rams to the Super Bowl, and he gets a big deal with the Buffalo Bills and plays pretty well, and then gets hurt, and then he has to restructure his contract because they're hoping that he returns to form, and they need that leadership on the field. They need that talent, and I think this will be the year, because when they restructure a deal, that means, okay, you know, we've really paid you your contract, we've done our part, and it was smart business on his part to make sure he did that. But he knows that this year is an audition. He knows it. If you're in San Francisco and you're trying to hold on to Brandon Ayuk and you're doing everything you can to really shore up that team, because, you know, I think Chase Young has signed a 1-year deal somewhere else. He's out of here. I don't understand why guys like that are very productive get stuck on this cycle where they keep getting 1-year deals, like de facto 1-year deals that are like, what do you call it? Like franchise tagging them, right? And Chase Young helped that team, right? And if San Francisco has any hope of getting back and threatening for the Super Bowl again this year, that's a guy that they shouldn't have let walk. They should have figured out a way to give him a 2 or 3 year deal to keep him on the roster, because they still have a window. I think San Francisco is still pretty good. Or if you remember one of the episodes we did a few episodes back, Brock Purdy being pretty good, right? Not great, but pretty good. He is on a rookie deal. That window is still about a year or two where he's still pretty cheap. And you can still pay McCaffrey. You can still pay IU. You still on the hook for Debo. You got to pay Kittle. You know, you got to pay Bosa. You got the pieces because your quarterback is so less expensive. And they really dropped the ball with this window. So that window is closing. I'm not saying it's shut, but it's definitely closing. And free agency. That's one of the things that free agency can do, because when you're at the top of the NFL food chain and you're winning division titles, you're making deep runs in the playoffs, guess what's going to happen? Other teams are going to come, they're going to pony up for pieces that they think that's going to push them over the hump. Kind of like what the Browns trading for Jerry Jeudy. They're trying to cash in on that ridiculous contract to a certain extent with Deshaun Watson, and not because he didn't deserve guaranteed money because of his talent. Guy hadn't been on the field, right? So free agency is kind of one of those things, man. It's definitely probably more hit than miss, right? It probably doesn't work out for the team that does it, but you got to do it. But here's the truth: free agency really does feel good. I'm not gonna lie, it feels great, in particular if you're the Eagles and you need another running back because you lost Swift to another team. You bring in a guy that was the number 2 pick that's essentially carried his franchise. And people said, well, he was hurt. Well, wouldn't you be hurt with that sucky line? Wouldn't you be hurt if you played with one of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL that got paid before you did? So if you put him with a world-class organization, I did say that, with the Eagles, based on what they've been able to accomplish, having Jalen Hurts, he should bounce back this year. He didn't have a terrible season, but compared to what he did the Super Bowl year, a lot of people are trying to basically roll that back, because it's what a lot of people know. If the Eagles feel like you're getting unproductive and you're not good, they'll find your replacement. And don't be shocked if the Eagles will take a quarterback in this draft in the later rounds, kind of like what they did with Jalen Hurts, to kind of see what they got, see if they really grade out well, because the Eagles is one of those franchises that'll definitely go with their draft board. They're not going to overdraft for the most part. They won't really move up too much unless it's just somebody that they really want, that they know is going to probably fly under the radar to a certain extent. But for some of their division rivals and other people on their schedule, the last thing they want to do is look in the mirror and say, man, we could have drafted that guy. So that's why you like the Howie Rosemans of the world. That's why he's the longest tenured GM in the NFL. Ozzie Newsome had that title for a while until he retired just a few seasons ago. But those kind of guys, they understand their philosophy, kind of like the Green Bay Packers, right? They've been lucky over the last 30 years where they've gotten all of their franchise quarterbacks. They've had Brett Favre. They got him in the trade from Atlanta back in the 90s. Then they drafted Aaron Rodgers. Then he was a star for 10, 12 years. And then they drafted Jordan Love. Many people questioned that draft pick. But hey, looks like it's paid off, because the young guy's already won a playoff game and looks like he's going to be the quarterback for the future. And they're probably already trying to figure out a way to back up that Brinks truck, because they need to do it now. Because if he has a great, phenomenal season again this year, he's going to be a hot commodity, and they're going to have to make a decision. They're going to have to sign him. And I think that they probably will, considering the fact that they have managed their free agency and their drafting. And what they've done is, with the exception of letting Devontae Adams get out of there, and Devontae wanted to be gone because he knew that Aaron was long in the tooth and it was just time to do something different. And he probably knew he wasn't going to get it back in Green Bay, thus being in not Oakland, make that the Los. I keep on saying Los Angeles, the Las Vegas Raiders. But the contract is obese, but man, they ain't winning nothing like down there, and that's another downside to free agency, right? And because you can get your money, but what if you get your money and you go to a team that's not a contender anymore? Yeah, you got financial security, that house that you bought now is probably paid off with that big signing bonus that you got, depending on where you were living. You probably probably still have that house, that first house that you bought with that first contract, and that feels great, and it's paid off. But man, you're on a team that is not good, and it does not feel good. That's where free agency has its challenges. Let me take a drink real quick. Let me pause for the cause. Go ahead, drink your drink, sports pastor. Think I will. Hang on one second. Lemonade, a cool, refreshing drink. I needed that. Anywho, understanding it from that perspective, though, it works on the flip side too. Because when you look at teams like the Atlanta Falcons, many people are perplexed, and I'm not necessarily perplexed. A to Z, I'm not really perplexed because I'm not really surprised by Atlanta. I'm not surprised by Minnesota or Washington. But what I am surprised about with the sports community, listen to your sports pastor for just a second, just a tad bit. Because one of the things I find really interesting is in sports, in particular across the board, whether it's MLB, NBA, NFL, hockey, even tennis, even soccer. If a guy or person is a superstar, we measure their success, we measure their their uh, their earnings and all the things by what they've accomplished. And there's a quarterback in the NFL that I think that we all should bring to the stage, all should bring to the stand. And if I was an NFL player, I'm firing my agent today, and whoever Kirk Cousins' agent is, I'm calling him because this guy has sports nine lives. I mean, he probably got about 4 or 5 of them left. Because even after he finishes this Atlanta contract, somebody might still give him $100 million. They don't care. I don't know what it is about Kirk Cousins. I get it. You know, the whole thing with RG3 and him coming into the league at the same time. Look, first and foremost, let me say this. There are several ways to look at this. I want to make sure I'm fair when I say this. I am not mad at Kirk Cousins for getting paid. Because that's the title of the episode, right? Can I get paid? And if you can figure out a way to get paid, if you have a market, that's what's called for enterprise. You know, I don't like when people get upset when players have upward mobility, even in the college game now, because you might as well say it's a de facto pro league now, because players can transfer as much as they want to. And it used to be with the make that the NCAA, what do they call them? Letters of intent. Most people didn't even know that they were 1-year contracts and 1-year renewable, kind of like they still are, because when Deion Sanders took over at Colorado, why do you think all those kids had their marching orders to get up out of there, right? Because they weren't going to renew those contracts or those scholarships. I'm sorry. That's supposed to be what I'm supposed to say, scholarships. Yeah, wink, wink, right? So with that being said, when you look at a Kirk Cousins, first 4 years of his contract, 4th-round pick, making peanuts, right? RG3 goes down. He starts to play well. They franchise tag him twice. He's auditioned. And guess who's quarterback poor? It's Minnesota. Minnesota says, they don't love you. We do. We'd love to have you. He gets his first guaranteed deal, does pretty decent, puts up numbers like Kirk Cousins does, right? That's what he does. But out of all the years he's been in the league, right? All the years he's made, and they watch this number right here. Are you sitting down? You ready for this? This guy has made $320 million, not $320,000, not $320 like he should probably be actually making when you understand it from this perspective. One playoff win. Let that sink in for just a second. One playoff win. Again, in sports folklore, if we didn't care that LeBron has made $1 billion playing basketball, and you know what we say? He's only got 4 championships, is what we say. I don't understand that. He lost against Dallas. You know, people come up with all kind of nutty stuff. Kevin Durant left a team that he ran away and went on a team that didn't need him. But then with a Kirk Cousins, it's like, well, I don't fault him. What do you mean you don't fault him? It's not fair. I can't fault him for a team paying him, no. But on the flip side, when I turn the corner and I look at the sports content or the debates that I hear all the time, whether it's guys like me with podcasts, or if I'm in the barbershop, if I'm just talking sports with my buddies casually, nobody ever brings up the fact that Kirk Cousins has only won 1 playoff game, but you roast Dak Prescott. I mean, roast him for only having, 2 playoff wins or 3 playoff wins? And he's got more playoff wins than Kirk Cousins. Many people say in the commentary business, in sports folklore, we say that Dak and Kirk Cousins is the same guy. Are they? Let's really break that down. Are they the same guy? Because one guy is not criticized the same. And I get it. When you play for the Dallas Cowboys, if you're Roger Staubach, if you're Danny White, if you're Troy Aikman, if you're Quincy Carter, you name them. If you're Tony Romo, look, you got to walk on water. And the last quarterback to win a Super Bowl was Troy Aikman, and that's been over 30 years ago. Right? So I get it. But understand this. They've had quite a few quarterbacks. When Drew Bledsoe got let go from the Patriots, when Tom Brady took his job, he ended up in Dallas. Had some decent years, but then got hurt. And then they had Quincy Carter, and he failed some drug tests. Right? They had Chad Hutchinson, and they had all these different guys that fit certain little things that they thought that was cool, and it didn't work. Tony Romo comes in and plays well. Dak Prescott, same thing. They hadn't drafted a quarterback in the first round in 35 years. That's amazing. And that's because of Dak Prescott. That's because of guys like Tony Romo. But those two guys have more playoff wins than Kirk Cousins. And they've made a lot less money. But yet, you got less smoke for Kirk Cousins. In fact, many Atlanta fans and even a lot of analysts that are not Atlanta fans have fixed it in their minds to believe that some kind of way Kirk Cousins is going to push the Falcons over the hump. Man, I've been trying to get this swampland because every Atlanta Falcon fan, every local analyst, every national analyst that believe that, man, I can get, you talking about can I get paid? I can get paid off of that because these guys actually believe this. They actually believe that Kirk Cousins is going to take them further. And here's what they said. Giving Kirk Cousins $100 million guarantee is just worth the division title. Let that breathe for a second. If I'm paying a guy that kind of money and I'm only getting the division title, you're getting that with Dak Prescott and you don't even like it. I don't understand. It makes no sense. Baker Mayfield got paid some money too. And granted, Baker Mayfield has earned his money. I'm not mad at Baker Mayfield. I think Baker Mayfield actually has the same amount, if not more playoff wins than Kirk Cousins. So I'm not really mad at Baker Mayfield getting the contract. But can we be brutally honest here? Can we look at that division for real? Can we look at the NFC South for real and think that is a viable division that is going to produce a viable threat to represent the NFC in the Super Bowl next year? You don't believe that. You pay Baker and you'll pay Kirk Cousins, who is coming off an injury. You'll pay them that kind of money just to win the division. And the division winner last year was under 500. Yeah, they won a playoff game. Okay, so what? But it's not like that division was just brutal. You know, Carolina is in all kind of trouble. All kind of trouble. Poor Bryce Young. He's probably the next Justin Fields because he's in a situation to where they're going to blame him instead of them having a bonehead front office and an even dumber owner who would pay a college coach the money that he paid. But it's Bryce's fault. Okay, wink. Yeah, it's Bryce's fault. Yeah, Bryce, I hope you go to summer school. If you didn't graduate, get that degree, bud. Take that money and invest it well because you're probably not going to make it past this contract. Oh, let's not even mention New Orleans. Derek Carr. I don't know what's up with these Carr brothers, but Jesus, have they made a lot of money and didn't win diddly squat. Derek Carr has a losing record as a star. Are you talking about free agency? Yep. Because here's what happened last year. The Raiders said they got packing, and that paid that man all that money, and they could have gave him a much lesser contract. And what did they get out of that free agent signing last year? Didn't even make the playoffs. Was under 500 like Derek Carr normally is. And oh, by the way, he got hurt again. So I'm trying to figure this out. This is never fair when we look across the board. And that's why there's certain parts of me that when I look at it from a business perspective, and I say, hold on, this guy right here and that guy, they're the same guy, but yet this guy gets a bigger contract and the analysts are cool with it? I don't understand it. It makes no sense. The NFC South is a mess. And they were the most active at the quarterback slot. And they're proud of it. Raheem Morris, the new coach, who's a retread, by the way, and he got another shot. I mean, I'm hoping, and I've told this to a lot of guys that I've talked to around the country that I know that I respect that have podcasts. I'm keeping my fingers crossed, my eyebrows, and my toes crossed that Raheem Morris is not another Josh McDaniels. I'm hoping that's not the case. I'm hoping that's not the case. I'm not saying that it is. I'm just saying that it's got some tea leaves. Listen to your sports pastor now, because I have a different spin on sports. You know, sometimes the Holy Spirit, the higher power, however you want to explain it, gives me a little bit of revelation and insight. And every now and again, I just might turn out to be right. This is one of those things I don't want to be right about. Because with free agency, many people thought that Justin Fields was a better route. Trading with the Bears, getting that quarterback. Raheem Morris is probably like, nah, I'd rather take Kirk Cousins because I know him. I've been on coaching staffs where he's played, but you'd rather take that chance on a 35-year-old quarterback coming off a major injury. That sounds insane. Completely insane. It sounds just like a Josh McDaniels statement. It sounds like a Charlie Weiss statement. I have a schematic advantage over everybody else because of what I do and how my offense runs, and you seek to get run out of town. I don't think Charlie Weiss has been a coordinator again, let alone a head coach. So we understand it from that perspective. Free agency is about getting paid for players. It is for teams that believe that they may be one player over the hump. But when you look at the Titans, you look at, the Giants, you look at, those kind of teams, you really do scratch your head. You really do. I think the Bears, on paper, it looks pretty good because they've signed some pieces, right? The Browns, these aren't your father's Browns, right? They're a little different. I think they took a big swing on Deshaun Watson, Jerry Jeudy, Amari Cooper when they got him from the Cowboys. I think that they got the pieces together. They got an offensive-minded coach. They got a good defense. I think that AFC North is going to be tough. It's always been tough. Even down to Mike Tomlin not ever having a losing season and then reloading at quarterback with Russell Wilson and getting Justin Fields, having that team that he's basically bringing back. They're not really losing much, having one of the better defenses and one of the best defensive players in the league on the team to anchor the defense. It's really going to be a nice race because the Ravens are going to be the Ravens. Maybe Joe Burrow comes back and maybe he's Joe Burrow again. Maybe they keep T. Higgins in the fold. Maybe that kind of works out. But the Browns are going to be tough, right? This is going to be a dogfight in this division. And looks like they've gotten a lot of pieces right. And you got to understand the teams that are very well ran and they understand here's a pastoral reference. You've probably been waiting on that. I know. Come on, get to the spiritual thing, man. You're talking about sports. Jesus put it this way: what king makes war with another unless he counts up the cost? With some of these teams, with some of these GMs, I'm not sure if they're counting up the cost. They're making war. Oh my God, they are making war. Yes, they are. And they're making mistakes. They are sending aid to places that probably don't deserve it. And that's without getting too political, because everybody don't like certain political references. Don't write the show. Forgive me if you don't like it. Pray for me. But you get what I'm saying. And when you understand it from that perspective, and you look at the cost not being really, it's not adding up. Kirk Cousins, a 35, say that again, a 35-year quarterback getting that kind of money when you could have got a guy that was $2.7 million. And you could have picked up his fifth-year option and you would have known what you had. Oh, no. I think I want these old shoes. Signing Kirk Cousins is like buying a 2012 Range Rover with 212,000 miles for $40,000. You wouldn't do that, would you? I hope you wouldn't. I hope you would count up the cost and understand that you can set a franchise back. And many franchises, like the Bears, the Raiders are starting to trend in that direction because they thought that Jimmy Garoppolo was going to be better, and he wasn't. 49ers knew it. That's why I let him hit the street. Right? There's 5 first-round quarterbacks that's in this draft, and a lot of teams are probably trying to jockey and count up the cost because if free agency is not going to be the bid, if that's not going to be the way to go, then you got to get it right in the draft. And I think that teams that are very well ran, yes, they'll take certain calculated swings. They will count up the cost. Most times, even with count up the cost, they get it wrong. And I sense with Atlanta, they've gotten this really wrong. They've gotten this wrong. I'm how can I put it? Wrong. They've gotten it wrong. Completely wrong. And it is sad because this guy has 4 lives left. He really does. Let me say it again, $320 million for one playoff win. One. Numero uno. One. Let me say that again. One. I know there's a lot of things that really goes into that A to Z. I know it does. But as Bill Parcells once said, the great Bill Parcells, who won 3 different, at least won 2 Super Bowls and took 3 different teams to Super Bowls and took others to deep playoff runs, said that you are what your record says you are. And if your record and your track record as a GM and franchise is spending too much money on guys that are either past their prime or serve no other purpose other than what you think they can bring to your team, because really free agency for a lot of GMs and teams is like college and the recruiting trail and the recruiting rankings. That's what it's turned into, A to Z, and it's really sad. I saw you raise your hand. You know I'm flowing. What you want? Okay, I'm just. I don't believe that. I don't believe that. I well, I understand it from a space of the familiarity with Kirk Cousins and Raheem Morris. No different than what happened with Russell and Sean Payton, right? Sean Payton is thought of to be this smart coach, and I think that has been grossly exposed that he's really not. And if you're going to bet on a rookie quarterback, or you got Jared Stidham on the roster who hasn't stuck anywhere he's been a career journeyman. He's done just enough to make GMs and teams think he's going to turn into something that he's not. No shade, it's just true. He should be on the Joshua Dobbs train, right? Where you move around every year. Don't buy a house, rent an apartment, because you're moving next year, right? Don't get married yet. Wait till you get done with this. Give the wife some stability, right? But the problem is that the Kirk Cousins of the world, they'll cash in and no shade. But front offices, coaches, scouts, teams, fan bases, and even going back to what you said about many people thinking that they're afraid of Vic 2.0. I disagree with that. And I think that if they thought that Justin Fields was really good and they saw something on film that they felt that they could coach and turn around, he'd be in Atlanta. I don't think it has anything to do with Vic. I don't. I think it has to do with the regime that thought that Kirk Cousins was a better option than a guy that was a top 15 pick that's on a rookie deal that's got 2 more years. It just felt better. Like I said, Kirk Cousins is a 2012 Range Rover, and Justin Fields is a 2021 Lexus with about 67,000 miles on it. Right? Lower miles, really less expensive in comparison to this marked up Range Rover with too many miles and other maintenance problems that you got to deal with at some point. So that's really what it is. And Atlanta being the city that it is and the makeup and the dynamic, I get it. Because Michael Vick is going to always be Michael Vick just because of what he represented culturally. I get it. Nearly took you guys to a Super Bowl, but never got there. Matt Ryan did that. He should have won and didn't do it. And Matt Ryan had a great career. Can't take anything away from him. Can't take anything away from Vic's tenure. Right? It comes down to who you like versus what actually happened. But Justin Fields is no Michael Vick or Matt Ryan. Not even close. You can't fix your mouth to say that. Now, we don't know if he'd ever become that, right? We don't know that. Now, if he turns out to be pretty good in Pittsburgh, people will really be mad at Atlanta because they'll think that, he could have done that in Atlanta. And that may not be true. Because success at the quarterback position really is contingent on where you go. Ask Bryce Young. Ask Vince Young. Ask Zach Wilson. Ask Sam Darnold. And the list goes on and on. Where almost, if you're honest, if Jared Goff keeps Jeff Fisher, he probably is not in the league now. Those things matter. Never get that twisted. But as we wrap this up, we talked about counting up the costs. Here's the spiritual component to this. Because I think that a lot of the times with free agency, and we look at what you get out of being a pro athlete in particular, because, I have no clue what it's like to be a pro athlete. I want to be one, like most kids. I mean, you play any game, if you're worth if you're worth anything in the folklore of dreaming big and believing that you can do what you put your mind to, all you need is one jump shot to hit all net in the game and the crowd go wild. You think you're destined for the NBA. The percentages of how you get there, that doesn't matter. You hadn't counted up that cost until you find out you get cut from the team yet again, and you're in the 11th grade and you're under 5'10", probably not going to make it. Unless you're Spud Webb or Nate Robinson, those kind of guys. Truth of the matter is not how tall you are. You just can't play that well. And that's okay. You can count those costs up. But the thing that, when I look at free agency and I look at how teams choose what cost they count up and how they value and what they really serve, Jesus put it this way: we can't serve God and mammon. And a lot of times, as the Bible says, sometimes we look at things that God doesn't look at. God looks at the heart. He understands what the real cost is, what the real value is. And many in the sports world, many in just life and life abundantly, we miss it because we don't look at the things that God look at. We don't look at the tangibles and the intangibles and count up the cost and look at our teams and look at our families, look at our businesses, look at the endeavors that we have right in front of us. And most times we're going to make a cosmetic decision instead of a decision that's tough, instead of a decision that makes no sense. That's what separates the Kansas City Chiefs from the Chicago Bears or the Las Vegas Raiders or any other franchise that has perpetually struggled over the last 5 to 7 years. Because if I look at skill set, if I look at not their record in college, like Pat Mahomes, who had a losing record, by the way, in college, who never was on the Heisman radar, who never played at Alabama or USC, name any blue blood. You would think that the people that were scouting at the time would have brought that guy to be their quarterback. Didn't happen. Same thing goes with the NFL, as such as life with spiritual things. If you don't get anything else out of this podcast, understand that you can't make cosmetic decisions and be successful. You have to have a blueprint that makes sense. You have to have something that's tested and tried, where you've counted up costs and you've decided to really look at what you have in front of you and evaluate and make the best decision. Is drafts, is free agency, if anything in exact science? No. But it is a reason why certain people are successful and why some people wallow in the doldrums of mediocrity, because they continue to make cosmetic decisions. So, hey, this has been another episode of Sports and Spiritual Things. I want you to like, share, follow us on our YouTube page. Look, help us grow this channel. This is for a bigger cause than just talking sports. There are times that I will go off the deep end with sports because that's in me. But let's say a word of prayer and we'll let you guys go. Thank you, Father, for another opportunity to disseminate the gospel, have a little fun with sports. God, we thank you for those that may be watching. They may not know you in the part of their sins. God, we pray that something has been said in this episode that can be used to be watered, to be planted, and you still get the increase. God, continue to bless our families. God, continue to protect us. Continue to let us enjoy sports, enjoy life, enjoy our families, God, and be accountable to what we're supposed to do. We give you praise, we give you glory, we give you honor. In Jesus' name we pray, amen. Thanks so much again for joining us for another episode of Sports and Spiritual Things. We'll be back another time with another powerful episode of Sports and Spiritual Things. See you soon.